All right. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talkin Investing. You are here with Tom and George.
Hello.
Hello, George. We got a lot to go through today.
Serious George.
Serious George today. George, I think George is looking for the complaint department today. So we're going to see what George has to say. I got some stuff to say. I think some real interesting stuff is going on with the Bitcoin miners. We got a lot going on with Bitcoin. We got a Bitcoin summit today with the president. We've got a Bitcoin reserve. We've got most of the Bitcoin miners put out their monthly operational report. So there is a ton to go through today. So looking forward to the stream. If you are new here or if you're just joining us, if you could be so kind as to hit the like button, because it does help our stream out in real time. Let's get some people over here. I actually started 1 minute late, I think, today. That's just about as good as it gets for me. So
is that true? You were at the summit, Tom?
My invitation must have got lost in the mail.
Yeah, mine too. Do you think that helps?
I think that, none of the Bitcoin miner CEOs, I didn't see anywhere where any of them, it was more of all the heads of the crypto exchanges and some other power players in the space.
I know what's real. It's not, wow, okay, I know what's going on.
That's enlightening.
Let's just say, I think there's going to be another, would it be a corporation? I guess it would be another corporation that's going to get bankrupt. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think I know what you're saying.
I'm sure if I start spewing the truth this early, this won't get...
Yeah, we'll get shut down.
We'll get shut down, but I bet you that's what this is really about.
Hello, JJT. Welcome, Alexander, Sour Melon Gaming.
Because you think that these exchanges are going to turn into banks, right? They kind of already have.
I mean, the first thing they got to do is stop picking on them, which it seems like they've done. And I've got some articles to go through that. The SEC, which was once basically just a hostile organization against cryptocurrency and particular cryptocurrency exchanges, some specific cryptocurrencies, there's been a 180-degree reversal on that. We'll talk about some of that today. There's a lot of good stuff going on. I know it feels like we're going sideways. Bitcoin feels boring right now. The Bitcoin miners feel worse than that, although I'm going to show you a reason why I think, and we talked about this on the members only, I think the Bitcoin miners are a lot closer to bottoming out and turning around than Bitcoin. And we saw some evidence of that in the last 3 days. Although it has been a roller coaster ride, and I am predicting, so I'll just say right off the top, I'm predicting at least 4 more weeks of roller coaster. I shouldn't say at least. I'm predicting approximately 4 more weeks of getting our hopes up, getting our hopes dashed. But I do think we're about to break out of this and start moving to the upside. Of course, not financial advice ever, but do your own due diligence. As you can see, we are in the highest volatility spot in the entire stock market. And when you look at some of these, if you look at what some of these Bitcoin miners did in a single day this week and on the week this week, you're really going to understand why I talk about volatility 10 times in every single stream. Because if you are not used to this level of volatility, it's shocking and you'll get wrecked. You're just going to get wrecked. So please look at the charts, understand them. And
Fred did go to the summit, Tom. Fred is there.
Thank you, Miner Deegan. I couldn't find that. I remember he's the one I told you, George. I said, I'm real surprised Fred didn't get an invite. He seems like the one that would get invited. So apparently he did, and I missed that. So thank you to one of our members, Miner Deegan, for pointing that out.
Michael Saylor was there too, of course.
Michael Saylor, yep. All the big names, all names we know.
Armstrong. They were going to have BitBoy there, but I guess his eyes are still black and blue.
That's a rumor.
Did I tell you? No, that's true. He got in a big fight. I didn't know this guy.
Not that part, the other part.
Oh, yeah. The black and blue eyes? Hello?
That he got invited to the summit.
Oh no, he got invited. I'm sure he got. He would say he got invited.
Yeah, he might say that for
Isn't
sure.
that sad to think how much that guy went off the rail? And that guy was basically, he was pretty popular way back when, you know?
Pretty popular. Everybody knew who he was, whether
Yeah.
you liked him or didn't like him. Everybody knew who he was, and I don't know. That's a whole mystery to me. Sour Melon Gaming is saying, Tom, in 2 months we're going to be saying the same thing. Bitcoin will improve and run is a month or so. We have been saying it for 6 months.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to argue with you, Sour Melon Gaming. There's every reason to be afraid that a month from now we're going to be having the same conversation, and a month after that we're going to be having the same conversation, because that is what has been happening to us for an extended period of time. We had about 7 months of this in 2024, and then we had a gigantic breakout. So, you know, this sideways run is about 3 months long right now. So I don't think we're quite there yet. And we're going to look at mostly what I'm looking at. And it's hard to, you know, we all try to look at macro environment things. We look at political things. We look at geopolitical things. We look at, I look at a lot of the technicals, and, you know, no one thing dictates what's going to happen, but you got to try to find out, you know, what seems to be the most powerful force right now. And, you know, in the super, and you got to look short term, midterm, long term. In the super short term, right? Obviously, all the tariffs talk has been dominating what's happened to the stock market in the short term. Now we've got interest rate talk that's starting to freak people out. That's been a roller coaster ride. We were going to get no cuts. We're going to get 3 cuts. Now all of a sudden, you know, today Jerome Powell said we're in no hurry. But it still looks like the market is pricing in 2 or 3 rate cuts in 2024. So although this meeting and next meeting, I'll just go to that very quickly and get it out of the way, because who cares? Also, if everybody could do us a favor, we're at 32 likes. If you could smash the like button, we're going for 100 likes, then 200 likes. So it is much appreciated. And if you're watching live, of course, and if you're watching us later on, welcome to the channel, and you can still smash the like button. All right, George has a poll up.
There's the first question. Do you think we're in a recession? And I know that the definition of a recession, Tom, take it.
I mean, the technical definition of a recession that we've always used is that GDP is down 2 quarters in a row, right?
Right.
So I think we actually had that happen, but then they said, nah, this time that's not a recession. And that was back in 2022. So for some reason, all of a sudden, that was not a recession.
No, I'm just curious how people are feeling overall. Because I live in a freaking bubble down where we are. We're in Naples, Florida.
Well, that's right.
I got to tell you this, because this was crazy. I stopped to get gas, right? And no lie, 14 McLarens show up, 3 Lamborghinis, freaking Bentleys, Aston Martin. I mean, no lie, there had to be close to $20 million in cars. They were all around us, like at all the gas pumps and everywhere. I was just like, only in Naples.
Right. This is La La Land. So you're not gonna. That's not a reflection of what's going on in this country or in the world, right? Then you go back to Georgia, and that's a dose of reality. I'm from upstate New York. I can tell you, you're not going to see any of those things driving. You're going to see. I know how many of those you're going to see at the gas station in Rochester. 0.
None. Yeah. Southwest Florida just has so much freaking money down here.
Yeah, it's hard to get a gauge when you're looking in this, but you know, we see what's going on, and we still have to go to the grocery store. I mean, forget the gas station. How about the grocery store?
Somebody brought up a really good, interesting point, and that was the exact amount of money that is being saved by Doge is the exact amount of money crypto is down.
Coincidence?
I don't know. I thought that was very interesting. You're very insightful. I'd like to say I thought of that, but I did not.
That was from one of our people in the chat, or you heard that somewhere?
No, it was the chat.
So we're sitting at around $87,000 in Bitcoin. Should we go through what happened from a numbers standpoint with the Bitcoin miners this week? Because this was a weird week. And some of what we've been talking about, I think, is starting to happen, which is last year in 2024, the trade was the Bitcoin mining companies that were talking about AI, not even necessarily doing AI, although some of them were doing. But even the ones that had no contracts, no nothing, but were talking, they were allocating, they were creating infrastructure. Those were the ones that were running the best. A lot of the Bitcoin miners that were hodling, I think all of them, were actually down on the year in 2024. On a year that Bitcoin was up over 120%, they were all red. And we're starting to see a trend reversal in that. So I think that's going to be the trend reversal of 2025. I've been saying that since, December. 2025 is not going very well so far. You're going to see, but 2 of the last 3 days have been very green days. And then right in the middle, we have a giant red day. So we have a giant green day. I saved them. I took screenshots. We'll look at them. We had a giant green day on Wednesday, a giant red day. This is for the Bitcoin miners on Thursday. And then, a nice green day today. Some of the things where Core Scientific was still in the red a little bit. Iron was only up 1%, but Cleanspark up 8%. Marathon up 6%. TerraWolf 7%. Bitfarms up 10.7%. So I can only say, again, not financial advice, but from a personal perspective, it's the only one that I've been dollar cost averaging into lately. When the members ask me which do I think is the best buying opportunity right now, I said, you're all going to disagree with me, but I think it's Bitfarms, because Bitfarms, in my opinion, is so stupidly oversold. Even at $1.24, it's up to $1.24. This thing was down at like $1.10. It was crazy time. So I think these, and it's not the only one, right? I think there's still a lot of bargains on this list. Now, if the Bitcoin bull run is over, then these aren't going to be bargains. This is the way it's going to be. But that's not where I believe things are at. I think there's a lot of run left ahead of us. We got a lot of runway, and I think the Bitcoin miners have a lot as well. And some of these, it's just nice to see some green. We see so many red days, so many days where the Bitcoin miners underperform Bitcoin dramatically over the last, 2024 and 2025, that it's nice to see some reverse days. For instance, IBIT, which is the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF, was down 2.39%, which means from the close of U.S. markets yesterday to the close today, Bitcoin was down 2.3%. Well, Cleanspark was up 8%. This is one of those days that I was talking about. These days are coming. Bitcoin's down 2%. Bitfarms is up 10.7%. We need a lot more of these days, but we can get them. And this is a pretty modest one, actually, because there's times where, usually it'll be when Bitcoin's green, Bitcoin's up 3%, and, TerraWolf's up 18% or 26%. We get wild moves in these stocks. So I do think there's some of those still ahead of us. MicroStrategy got taken out today. I don't know why, but we were mostly green. Core Scientific, of the Bitcoin miners, cores of the big ones, the 12 that we follow, and that list is changing. I'm going to go through that as well. I'm deleting 2 and adding 1, and we're going to keep our eye on that. It's Canaan, and we're going to talk about what that company is, because they have a little bit of a complicated equation. They do a lot of revenue sharing, so I'm not 100% sure we're comparing apples to apples, but we'll look at exactly what all that means. MicroStrategy to 20K. Is that still Edmund? Welcome, Edmund, if that is you. Still buying MicroStrategy. Bought 5 today and have over 2,100 shares. This is very easy with no commissions and 24/5 trading. Even Schwab has it. Yeah, and I've held on to I built a MicroStrategy position. I held on to my MicroStrategy. I waited till MicroStrategy had a 30% pullback, and I started dollar cost averaging in to get a full position, which I did. And I'm red in my position. So I started when it was down 30% and dollar cost averaged in, and I'm still red, but that's all right. It's been a rough year for Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. So that's why I say, I do think there's a lot of buying opportunities. Melon Gaming said, yes, it is, Edmund. Welcome, Edmund. Let's see what. So the last poll, do you think we're in a recession? This was very close. This was 60-40. So 60% said, no, we're not in a recession. 40% said yes. And this is all about, forget the technical definition. You asked me, what's the technical definition of a recession? I think what we're all feeling is at the gas station, but more so at the grocery store. It's brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Insurance, car insurance, health insurance, home insurance, if you're a homeowner. I mean, there's nothing. We need prices to come down. That's what we need. And, we're not there. And there's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road ahead. That's not going to happen starting tomorrow. But I do think we will see that happen, starting later in this year. And I can tell you, just with the new president who has an agenda that's dramatically different than the previous president, I just feel like this period of time right now is more a period where the president's going to try to implement his agenda versus look at the stock market and try and see if the stock market's happy with what he's doing, because it really doesn't make any difference right now if the stock market is happy with the president, because he just got elected. We're 2 years away from the next election. So this is the window to ignore the stock market. And we see the stock market pulling back. Now, I will say, I'm going to go to this tab. We're not even in a correction yet, in my opinion. So, the old rule of thumb, and you can say whatever it is, and obviously it depends on what stocks you hold. Some stocks have gotten destroyed. Some very popular retail stocks have gotten wrecked lately. But if you look at the S&P 500, this is the broader index, from its all-time high, which was just, 3 weeks ago? To the bottom of today was 7.9%. So 10% to me is a correction in the stock market. But we actually closed, we turned around, and we're only down 6% from our all-time high in the S&P 500. So we're not even really in correction territory, which is why I say this could go on for, a couple of weeks, a month, whatever the case may be. And now it'd be a different story. Even a new president early in his term, if the market was down 25%, he'd be looking, because people remember the times in our lives when the market's down 25, 30%. But these pullbacks, 5%, 6%, 10%, I'm going to go to the Qs are doing worse, which is the NASDAQ. But even if we measure that from its all-time high of less than a month ago. Now, if we go to the very bottom of today, that's 11%. So that is a correction. Now, we closed at 9%. But you could argue that today's price action represents a full correction in the Qs. So the question is, do we stop here? Because 20% pullback is a bear market. And again, I'm using rule of thumb. These are not necessarily, there's no specific exact meaning, but things have been bearish. we've had, the Qs, which are the more volatile, and some of the big companies which affect the Qs a lot more, had really bad weeks the last couple of weeks, and you can see. So that's a between a 9 to 11% pullback there. So that's a little worse. The Dow, which I pay no attention to, is only down like 3 or 4%. I'm just not sure there's anything to be gleaned from seeing what the Dow is doing. I see it, but I haven't paid attention to it in 20 years.
No. Why not?
It's 30 stocks. It's not representative of my portfolio. So in any way. So I care about what I'm investing in. Those are, the old blue chip, more conservative stocks. They should represent a lot less risk. I have a higher risk tolerance. I have a higher risk portfolio. I'm guessing a lot of people here watching have a much higher risk portfolio than the average person, who's investing in the Qs or in the SPY, like a lot of people will, when you have a 401k program, when you sign up, you check a box, what's your investment goals? You check that box once at the beginning when you sign up, and, you say, this is for my retirement, and they invest conservatively for the next, 20 years or however long you stay at that job. But with your, the people that personally trade tend to be a lot more aggressive and want much bigger returns. Now, with bigger potential rewards comes bigger risks, and we've lived that here. I know a lot of you have lived that. I have. I've had great years and awful years. So Jennifer saying I'm not a fan of tariffs. Tariffs have. Go ahead, George.
I'm going to take that one. Are you a fan of the IRS? How about if are you a fan of paying taxes, or are you a fan of tariffs? That's the question. That's going to be the poll question. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that would be income federal taxes or tariffs, because I think that's how he was going to abolish the IRS.
And that's been one of those. That's one of those talking points. But right now, I'm paying attention to everything because we're getting some upheaval. So there are changes happening. So we'll see. And I know there can be no debate that tariffs in the short term are wreaking havoc. The first thing is everybody's confused. The tariffs are on, the tariffs are off, the tariffs are on, the tariffs are off. It's very confusing to businesses. The business that I do a lot of consulting with, that I spend most of my time with, buys almost all of its product from Canada. So, we get a new memo every day from our suppliers. This is what's happening. That's what's happening. We can do this for you. We can do that for you. So, there's real world ramifications of this, and it is a little bit of chaos. But from a big picture, forgetting, the individual companies that get impacted in this in the short term, I think these are I think it's become clear these are negotiating tools. I don't think long term, they're looking for these tariffs to stick at the levels that they're talking about. But I do think there will be tariffs. And I do think the United States is looking to even the playing field a lot more. And on April 2nd is when, we're really going to see what happens. That's when the reciprocal tariffs are supposed to be enacted. In other words, if, company or country XYZ is charging 100% tariffs on the U.S., then we're going to charge 100% tariff on them. And, that's when things are going to get even more wacky than they are now, in my opinion. But I think this will all, like I said, there's a window of opportunity. The first 100 days for a new president that people take a look at, the first really 6 months, you're not in you're not in campaign mode or election season in any way, shape, or form. But it doesn't take long after that before you start campaigning for the midterms. And obviously the president doesn't run, for those of you not in our country or that don't pay attention to politics. The president won't be running in 2026, but the entire, House runs every 2 years, and a big portion of the Senate runs. So the midterm elections are a big deal, and that's when I think you're going to see all of this. Trying to get all this out of the way is my opinion, so that the economy can start to go into a boom in that part of the cycle. That obviously that's what's on their drawing board. What happens, we'll see what happens. Who knows?
Jennifer, are you asking, this isn't a real choice, are you asking about the poll? Because I believe that's what the choice is going to be. I think, correct or no?
There's a lot of, this is one scenario. This is an either or that you've suggested here. There's other hybrid scenarios of simplifying things, increasing tariffs, simplifying taxes, and there's a difference between taxes on businesses and individuals. And I don't want to get too political or get too much into economics, but one of the things that's happening with these tariffs is we've already seen a lot of very big companies, including Taiwanese Semiconductor, which is the biggest manufacturer of chips in the world, say they're going to invest $100 billion building plants to build chips in the United States. And that's what I think the number one catalyst for these tariffs is to put an incentive in place to say, listen, just come here and build it here. Here, I live in the United States. So come to from the president of the United States. It's basically saying to all these companies, especially the American companies, that's not even an American company. The American companies, they're saying, stop building your stuff in Vietnam and Taiwan and China and bring your plants back here and put Americans to work, and we'll have a thriving economy. That $100 billion will go here instead of there, right? We've seen, I think it's like $1.8 trillion in commitments from companies. Now, there's a big difference between a commitment and, the time frame it gets spent in and whether or not it ever ends up happening at all. We'll see if these companies are true to their word or not. But that's a big part of the equation.
Why do I believe that? I think they're going to go away. I guess that's just, what I mean? The difference. I don't know. I mean,
you think?
I think there's one thing about Trump that I think everybody can agree on. He likes to do something so you always remember him. You know what I mean? And having income taxes go away, I think would do that. You know what I mean?
This poll is pretty split. The comment in the chat section, they're saying this is not a real poll, but yet we're practically 50-50 on this poll. So if you're on a device where you can vote, take a vote and see.
And here's the other thing about taxes. I mean, this is going to get into something. It might become political, but it's not meant to be. But if income taxes are not constitutional. And I'm not trying to get political at all. They're just not. If you read the Constitution, this is the reason they left England.
Well, and that was to further clarify, that was taxation without representation.
Right.
But there was no, for the first 100 and almost 50 years of this country, there was no such thing as a federal income tax. So it's not something that hasn't happened. And
right.
then they rolled out a tax, a 1%. There was one tax bracket. It was 1% with a promise that that's all it was ever going to be. And obviously, the rest is history.
Only 1%. 1%, Tom. Okay, 1.5%.
I mean, that was over 100 years ago, but there was 150 years with none. So I don't know. I'm not expecting them to go away, but I think that I am expecting the volatility in where are all these tariffs going to land is going to settle down, and it could be like, you know, it could be 6 weeks, because we're still a month away from that April 2nd set of tariffs. That's the reciprocal tariffs. So, you know, we're 4 weeks away from that even kicking in, and we may argue about that for you know, a month or whatever it takes. So I understand it's causing volatility, fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's the U in FUD. It's causing uncertainty because we don't know what the heck these tariffs, where are they going to land? So in the meantime, that's causing, but you can see it's not catastrophic. It's causing a 6% pullback in the S&P 500. It's causing, it was as high as an 11% pullback in the Qs, and then but they had a big day today, and now it's a 9% pullback. So, you know, these are corrections. We'll see if these turn into 20%. Then we're talking about bear markets. If they turn into 25 or 30%, then we're talking about, you know, that's gonna be a totally different conversation if that's what happens. I don't think that's what happens. It's the same thing. Bitcoin. I'm gonna go back to the Bitcoin chart. I'm gonna go to the 1 day. I mean, we see, you know, how many 20% pullbacks, and it's hard to tell with the scale, but how many times did we have 20% pullbacks in, you know, this wasn't full 20 pullback. I mean, a 20% pullback for Bitcoin is kind of like business as usual. Now, this one's been bigger than 20%, but we did have a 30% pullback once in 2024, which was a very bullish year. Bitcoin was up 120% in the year, and we still had 5 pullbacks of 20% or greater and 1 that was greater than 30%. This one from top to bottom, this has been, you know, this has been a big one. This is 28.5% from top to bottom. Now, this bottom was a flash crash candle wick down to 78,000. On a daily close from the top, you know, we haven't really closed below 84,000. Believe it or not, it's hard for me to even believe, but so that's 23%. So we'll see. And I predict where there's weeks more of this type of price action coming. That's my sense of what's coming before we get the big move, and I'll show you why. And I want to just say it. Okay, we got 60 likes. Taking the time out to ask you guys to please smash the like button. We're at 60 likes. We're going for 100. It does help the stream out big time, so it is much appreciated.
I'll end it on tariffs, but I just think that tariffs should be uniformed. If they charge, you know, 20% on wheat, you know, I just make it more fair.
Well, that's the reciprocal tariffs that are being proposed, is if you charge this on us, we're going to charge it on you.
Right.
And then life gets real simple in a certain way, but it's highly disruptive because that's not how things have worked for the last 50 years. So that's why I'm saying there may be more chaos ahead, but you know, we can hope that it leads to a better situation down the line.
And I think that's a fairer system because then everybody pays. You know?
It's almost the same thing as eliminating tariffs.
Right.
If everybody's got to pay the exact same thing. Now, there's also the amount of trade back and forth between countries. So it's not, even if the percentage is the same, the dollar volume isn't going to be the same if you're having huge trade deficits. there's a couple of things happening that I think aren't done. So this is why I want to show you why I feel like there's, 2, 3, 4 weeks left of going sideways. This is the Bitcoin 1 week chart. And these are some very simple technicals, but this has played out like it is playing out precisely. So it seems to me like this is the dominant factor, even with all the noise where we have giant days to the upside, giant days to the downside because of the noise of the day. This pattern seems to be what's playing out right now and affecting everything. You can see this is a bearish divergence on the 1 week RSI for Bitcoin. And this goes back to, March of 2024. So this is, these form on the 1 week over long periods of time. And in addition to that, find the line, we had a bearish crossover on the MACD right here a month ago for Bitcoin, the 1 week Bitcoin. So those are two bearish things on the 1 week time frame. And we've seen the last time those have happened, we get, this was, so we're in the red here. Last time this lasted from the end of April to, October. So that was a little over 4 months. Now, this one was much shorter. This one was from July 31st to October 16th. And so that's, 2.5 months. So it can vary, and you can see here's another 2 or 3 month period. And you don't have to get all the way to a bullish crossover to start getting bullish action. So what I'm looking for and waiting for is somewhere in the next 2 to 4 weeks, these red candles on the histogram are bearish and they're getting bigger. So we want to see this moment in time. I'm waiting for this moment in time right here where the candles get smaller and they go from red to pink. If you look at that, right, if I sit on that one right there and we draw, that was here. So we did all of this before the bullish crossover. So we don't have to wait all the way to the bullish crossover. So I think sometime in the next month, we can get to this point right here and we see Bitcoin turn around. And I think you're seeing, when you look at the technicals on the Bitcoin miners, they got way more oversold than Bitcoin, and they're already turning around. So I think they're going to finally start to do what they're supposed to do. Obviously, they're still tied to Bitcoin in the big picture, but, today, they were not tied to Bitcoin today.
Tom, I'm about ready to do another poll, and I need your input on it.
Absolutely.
Which Bitcoin miner is going to have the best run in 2025?
Okay.
Give me 4.
All right.
I was going to do Cleanspark, Marathon, Riot, but the fourth one's the hard one. Bitfarms?
To me, I would put Bitfarms in there, and you might want to switch out with Marathon and Riot. You might want to switch one of those. We might have to do a double like you used to do. Remember in the old days we did a round robin? Let's do that.
Right. Okay, so there's gonna be 2 polls. This is the first poll.
This is
be Cleanspark, Marathon, Riot. Well, let me take out 2 then. I'll put Bitfarms and Iron.
That's good. That'll be our
and then
first
I'll
4.
Put the other Riot and okay.
And then we'll do our next 4, and then the top 2 from each poll will go to the finals, and we'll see who wins. Basically, which one's going to have the best run? Which one is the most undervalued right now?
And then I have another question when you got a minute. And it's a weird question, but I think it's a question that's probably on everybody's mind. You ready for it?
I'm ready.
When do you redo your thesis on what's going on in the miners? When do you say, you know what, I was wrong, I'm out?
When will I, on Bitcoin, on the Bitcoin miners, on
the
all
Bitcoin
of it?
miners. Yeah, the Bitcoin miners.
So I've been looking, and I said, they're on 90-day probation, and I will tell you, I've already, to Sour Melon Gaming's point, I've already kind of pushed that out an extra 30 days. But I do think if and when Bitcoin is done bottoming out and it breaks through its previous, we got up to around 109,000. When we break out of that to the upside, if the Bitcoin miners aren't running, then my first step will be, I'm not going to do a mass exodus, right? This is, one of your favorite terms is it's a fluid situation. But what I already am considering and may do, if I see that happen, I have now 6 different Bitcoin miners, plus I hold Bitcoin, plus I hold MicroStrategy. I may pare that down, leave the same amount of money, but pare that down to the ones that I have the absolute highest level of conviction in. So if I see that things are still lagging, then, that's what I'm looking to do in the next 60 to 90 days. If I see it's just not happening the way that I think it's going to happen. And I will tell you, we're already I will admit, we're miles behind where I thought we would be for the Bitcoin miners at this point in the cycle. I think that they have been. Now, let me go find. So, if you look, here's CleanSpark. This is as of February 15th. Short percent of the flow, 27% short interest in this. So this is one of the big reasons that companies like CleanSpark, which in my opinion, their performance has been outstanding. I might go as far as to give them an A for both their operations and their financial statements. And, their stock has not done well. In 2024, their stock was down for the year. But you see this giant short position. People don't keep short positions for all time. They don't make money that way, right? They're going to wash this. These will wash themselves out when the FOMO hits, when we get to a new all-time high. I believe the FOMO will hit for Bitcoin. The FOMO will hit for the Bitcoin miners. Probably the shorts will have all already gotten out ahead of that and taken long positions. So that's a double whammy. They got to buy back the shares they shorted and then go long. So I think you're going to see all of that happen in some 45-day window of time. And you're going to see vicious days to the upside, just like we've seen vicious days to the downside. So that's how I feel like what's coming next. I said many, coming up on a year ago, I'm out of the short-term guessing game because I'm exhausted being wrong. I will tell you, I don't know when. This is how I believe the bull market is going to play out, but trying to pick a day, your guess is as good as mine.
So, okay, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're thinking about rebalancing your position, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
So I would go, if things keep sluggish, and they keep lagging, and somebody just pointed something out, one of our members that, I don't know if it was one of our members or not. No, not. That I think is important to talk about. Robbie said Mara is picking up momentum in real time. So that they have 46,000 Bitcoin. So the companies, this goes back to what I talked about. The companies that hodl, I believe, are going to be the ones that have big runs ahead of them because they're just priced very inappropriately right now, in my opinion. And a lot of it is the short position. And if you look at what I call the big three, CleanSpark has now put them into this conversation. Marathon and Riot have been listed. They've been U.S. companies listed on the NASDAQ for the longest period of time. They're not the oldest companies, right? Bitfarms is just as old as them. We're older, and Hive is, and Hut is, and Argo Blockchain is, and I'm missing some other ones. But those are the big dogs. So if I go to Riot, so CleanSpark was at what, 27.4%. If I go to Riot's short interest, it's at 22.5. That's massive. So you got 27.5, 22.5. And then if I go to Marathon, and again, this is as of the 15th. So we'll get every 15 days, we get an update on this. Marathon was at almost 24. These are gigantic numbers, right? Most companies don't have more than a 5% short interest. So when you get to 20, 25, 30% short interest, at some point, that's going to go away. There will be, and it won't necessarily be a short squeeze in one day, although you'll get some of those days. And you can see, with the amount of trading volume, these are very popular stocks. 23.8% outstanding short is only 1.6 days to cover. So you'll see some companies that have an 18% short float, but it would take 6 days of activity to cover that volume. Those companies are the ones that could have a 200% short squeeze. But in a scenario with this much trading, you're likely we have gotten 20% up days, 30% up days for, an individual stock. And I think there's more of those ahead, a lot more. But, I don't think you're going to get, with the ones that we're following, the big 10, you're not going to get an 80% up day type of a short squeeze, in my opinion, ever on these. And I don't think we need to. And that's never, it's never a part of my investment thesis that, my stock's going to short squeeze, because that's just anybody's guess.
Tom, have they ever shorted a company with such good metrics like CleanSpark?
I mean, yes,
like this much. You know what I mean?
They can pick on companies this size because these are smaller companies. So the answer to that is yes. But the other answer is
making this amount of money.
They don't do it. Well, we just now got step one in what we talked about. I spent December talking about the fact and January that, the last financial statements that came out were the period September 30th, 2024. Those were awful. Those were some of the worst financial statements for the Bitcoin miners. That was right after the halving. Bitcoin had not made a big run up yet. Those were a disaster. This quarter's results that we're getting now, some of these companies are making hundreds of millions of dollars just in that quarter, ended December 31st, 2024. So that's a catalyst to start, these people that short this have a formula that's a lot more complicated. They've got an algorithm that, I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know exactly how they do this, but I can tell you they just checked one of the boxes. These companies are making money. They're profitable. They're not just a little profitable. Marathon made like $500 million in the fourth quarter. So for them, these people that have a short interest in Marathon are in trouble. That's all I would tell you. All right, welcome to Talkin' Investing. Tom, I say it every week. This is from Sourbound Gaming. I say it every.
He retracted it. He didn't finish it, so.
He's got one up here. Tom, I say this every week, but I believe it's important to remind you and George of the positive impact you both make. I greatly appreciate the hard work and dedication you both have put into this channel. Well, thank you very much, Sour Melon Gaming. And I know this has been a very frustrating run for months now. But I know, you've shared some of your picks with us and had big wins. Now, some of it's gone back, and I understand that. And this is the roller coaster ride. So I appreciate you being a member and taking the ride with us. And
literally,
yeah, it is a roller coaster ride. I get it, and it's super. This has got to be one of the hardest sectors, maybe the hardest sector I've ever seen to invest in. So
that's the reason why I think it's going to do so well. I've gotten in the course of seeing my balance drop dramatically. So when I was trading it like all the time, I was killing it. But once I decided to really focus on work again, and I couldn't do that, is when they got me.
So that's right. That's another thing. If you're a day trader, and that can include swing trades, there was a time where George was spending a lot of time analyzing these, and he kind of had his pulse on where they were going, and he was making money on the volatility. And if if you're in a position to do that, these are extremely volatile stocks, and if you're playing them the right way, you can be making a lot of money on the volatility. The problem is if you're a long-term holder, if you start playing the guessing game and panic when these stocks are low, so much of these moves happen so quickly that you'll find yourself chasing to the point where you're potentially you sold low and you're just out, because now you forever feel like you're chasing and you either never get back in or you finally FOMO in near the high. So, there's a lot of different ways to make money on these. You can day trade, you can swing trade, you can buy and hold for a long time. If you're buying and holding, you can sell covered calls on, and please know what you're doing before you do stuff like selling covered calls.
Or you can lose 6 figures like me.
And it's really the opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity cost. Selling uncovered calls, I don't recommend to anybody, period. So that's just my opinion, not financial advice.
It is just amazing how much money they have beaten us up. It's crazy.
Which Bitcoin miner is going to have the best run in 2025? So this was, Cleanspark 38, Marathon 37, Iron 12, Bitfarms 11. So we know which two are going to the winner's bracket in that one. That was a runaway. Not the results I expected. So should we pick the next 4, George?
Yeah, I think so.
So I think we got to go Core Scientific, CORZ.
Okay.
Cypher.
Okay.
I mean, some are going to have to get skipped. Wolf.
Okay.
And I'm debating between BitDeer and Hut, both of which have big growth plans. Let's go with, I think Hut is a lot more popular, a lot more traded stock, so we'll go with Hut. And you can drop in the chat if your overall pick was BitDeer, because I know BitDeer has a lot of plans. They're a diversified company. They make their own chips. So they do some stuff different. A lot of these companies have big plans. Some of them don't have big plans. Some of them are coming off of my list, which we'll get to in a few minutes as well. We're at 80 likes. If everybody could please help us and get to 100 likes. Hit the like button. It's free. And while you're here, if you are interested in Bitcoin, Bitcoin miners, cryptocurrency, which we're going to be talking more and more about, altcoins and that kind of stuff, that's what we do here. And then obviously if there's big news, for instance, today we got to go through the jobs report. There seems to be the news of the week every week. We discussed the tariffs. We still have to talk about the Bitcoin mining reserve, the Bitcoin mining summit. So this was a very busy week in Bitcoin. And I think it was despite the price action, which was, mostly if I go to the 1 day, this was this was not a week to write home about. That's the 1 week. Switch back to the 1 day. So Monday was a train wreck. By the way, Friday was this gigantic green candle. We had back-to-back almost $10,000 candles on back-to-back this is Sunday. Bitcoin trades 7 days a week. Sunday up, this candle was $10,000 and then boom, right back down. Right back to where we started on Monday. So from a stock trading standpoint, Monday was a train wreck. Tuesday and Wednesday, we recovered a little bit and we gave some back. yesterday and today. So, not really a significant week. The one significant thing I will say is, other than, if I really zoom in, I have this line of support here I have it at $85,010, but let's call it $85,000. We had just these 2 days close a little bit below that line. Then we went right back above it, and we've held it ever since. So I count when we get these quick reversals, I count that this line held basically. So this has been a good line of support that goes all the way back to the beginning of this little sideways action that we're in. This started November 12th after a big run up in Bitcoin, right? So when you get right, there's 7 or 8 days where Bitcoin popped 31%, and then it ended up another 30% in the weeks that followed that. So, we had a big move to the upside, but in the bigger picture, this is why I'm saying if I draw an info line here, from the first day of this until now, we're 115 days into this. We're 3 months into going sideways. So that's why I feel like, is there another month left? Maybe, but this is a really great consolidation period. It doesn't feel really great. It feels awful, right? This is not fun. And the Bitcoin miners have done worse than Bitcoin. We'll look at that by far. So, it doesn't feel fun, but we're just about coming up on 3 months of consolidation. We just, we're getting, look at the histogram. We had a bullish crossover. There's just no momentum. We had a bullish crossover that did nothing. We had a bearish crossover. And now yesterday we had a green on the histogram, and today it looks like maybe it's going to be red. So Bitcoin can't decide what it's doing. It's very, very neutral. This is very, 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 very sideways, right? There's nothing exciting going on here. We're ending up right back where we started 115 days ago. So yes, we went someplace in the middle, and it's important. So I don't dismiss the fact that in the middle, we set a new all-time high twice. $108,388 back on December 17th. Then on January 20th, we got to $109,358. I'm on the Coinbase, TradingView Coinbase chart. So every single chart will have slightly different numbers since these are all different exchanges. But, we got over 109,000. So that's the new benchmark. That's what we need to do to take out our all-time high. Andrew, who is definitely our breaking news person. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew said, just in. U.S. regulator says banks can engage in crypto activities. So you want to talk about catalysts. I don't know. We'll have to dig in and see more exactly what and when and what the time frame is and what the scope of that is. But ultimately, when the banks are allowed to deal with this stuff, we're getting adoption galore. So I think we're still at the super beginning of this. We're at a very exciting spot. Yes, is there some manipulation? One of the things, as we've gone sideways like this and really, had a downward trend, the spot ETFs have been a very good cue of what's going on. So as we hit our all-time high, we had, a 3-week period that was the all-time record inflows into the Bitcoin spot ETFs. And now here you see our chart. It's almost all red. We have 2 days. We have a $94 million inflow on February 28th, a $22 million inflow on Wednesday, but that's bookended by a $143 million outflow on Tuesday and a $134 million outflow on Thursday, and today looks like an outflow. I don't know. We'll see when the numbers come in late tonight, but I think today's probably going to be red again. So this is, by the way, in the middle of all that, $1.1 billion of outflow on February 25th, the worst day in the Bitcoin ETF history. So some of this downward pressure, I think these are trading along with the technicals. So when I see the ETFs trade right along with this, especially that 1 week chart that I pointed out with the bearish crossover and the bearish cross on the MACD, but I do think that's all bottoming out, and we're in a bottoming out process. I'll go to somebody who's a little more optimistic than me. I think I have an article in here. So Tom Lee, we talk about him from time to time. He's on TV all the time. He's on CNBC. He predicts market bottom this week and still sees Bitcoin closing the year at 150,000. So this was on March 4th. So he was talking about this week. And I have seen an awful lot of people saying, buy this dip, don't be fooled, buy this dip. Now, that doesn't mean they're right. They could all be wrong.
Next week will be the low. By the way.
And so George thinks we got another week of this. I think we got another couple of weeks of bouncing around.
Well, Tom, I would agree with you, except the 14th is a beautiful day.
Is it we got a full moon?
You got it.
So for those of you, we've shown the moon chart. There is something to that, whether it's causation or whatever the case may be. There's something to these full moon, new moon deals that Bitcoin has followed pretty closely. It's not perfect, like no indicator's perfect. But
do you remember? It's so funny because like last weekend was so long ago in the crypto world. But I don't know about anybody else, but I thought it was all over with. I'm like, yep, this is it. It's taken off. It's not coming back down. And then they rug pulled me.
And I think they're going to do it again a couple of more times before we get through playing out that bearish pattern on the 1 week. That's just what I think. I could be wrong. And we get so much news. And, one of these big adoption things are going to hit and maybe change the game. Maybe it'll be sooner than I think. I hope it is. The one thing I'll say about Tom Lee is, so he's saying Lee also sees Bitcoin finishing higher than 150,000 by the end of the year 2025. I would just note in late 2024, he said Bitcoin would hit 150,000 by the end of 2024. So, he was wildly wrong about that. I think he's right about this. So if we did a poll, well, I think we got to do our runoff poll here, and this one was super close. Cypher 30%, so best return for Bitcoin miners. 30% picked Cypher, 26% picked Cores, 24% picked Hut, 18% picked TerraWolf. So very, very close, but we got Cypher, Core Scientific, and Cleanspark and Marathon. That's our finals. I do that one, George, or you want me to do it?
Yeah, no, what was it?
It's Cleanspark.
Okay, Cleanspark, yep.
Cleanspark, Marathon, Cypher, Cores. That's our final four.
Core, huh?
So this is what happened to them this week, because they got wrecked, and here's why. And I think again, I always think these gigantic moves are overreactions in the short term, but
Tom, looking at how many shares are float around with Cleanspark, there's just no potential that could be a short squeeze at all.
If it's my point on the short squeezes with these companies is that only represents 1.6 days worth of trading volume. So you could get a short squeeze to the extent where you'll see maybe, a 25% up day, which is a monstrous up day. You're not going to see 150% up day with a company like CleanSpark. So some of these tiny companies have short squeezes where they double or triple or quadruple. These companies, that's not going to happen. But I'm not saying they won't do that over time. I'm saying you're not going to have a short squeeze day where that happens. You might have one that runs for several days, because 1.6 days of trading activities, that could take, that's the full trading activity for the day. So that could take 5 days to wash out. So you could have a week where CleanSpark's up 50%. You could definitely have that for CleanSpark or Marathon or Riot, or TerraWolf has a huge short position out there. Those four, and there was one other I'm forgetting, had over 20% short. So yeah, you could see big moves on those. And I think whether they come quickly or slowly, I still think we're looking at multiples on a lot of these stocks. In other words, 2X's, 3X's, maybe 4X's.
Do you still see a $10 trillion cryptocurrency by the end of this year?
That was your call, George. I'll answer, but you go first.
I'm beginning to lose faith. It's going to be someplace between 8 and 12. How about that?
That's a great question, whoever asked that. And I was thinking about that, I don't know if it was last night or this morning, because, I liked that call when you made that, George, and I felt like it was very realistic. But I'm thinking in my head, what has to happen to Bitcoin for that to happen? And I really think we need to see Bitcoin at least at a minimum of $175,000 plus a big altcoin season to make that happen. Now, it could go another way. If Bitcoin gets to $225,000, then you don't need as much of the altcoin season. But I think that's still on the table. I don't think there's any guarantee that that's going to happen, but I think that is still on the table. I think there's a lot of upside left in Bitcoin. This has been a really, really nice consolidation period. This bearish divergence will end. They don't last forever. They can last a long time. We had a sideways action last for 7 months in 2024. But remember, that's in that year, Bitcoin still ended up 122%. So, at the end of the year, we were great. Starmelon Gaming said CleanSpark just shot up to 950 in after hours, but it's pulled back a bit now. Let's take a look and see where it is right now.
1% of the top Bitcoin holders own 90% of Bitcoin. What do you think?
I believe that. Let's see. We're up a couple of percent after hours here. Apparently it had surged for a minute. Was there news? I wonder if there was news or if it was just a weird trade. I mean, still, now it's up to $9. CleanSpark was in the sevens. 52-week low, $7.22. I mean, I will tell you, when it got down to 12, I started dollar cost averaging in again, because it was like, to me, 12 is makes no sense for CleanSpark. So, if 12 makes no sense, what do I think? A 9 is ridiculous. What do I think? A $7.50 is crazy time.
Do you think, Tom, that when they run again, that it's still going to do what it did this time? Go back and forth? Run way up and then pull way back again?
I think yes, these stocks will remain highly volatile. If you look at the 5-year on these, you'll see big swings up, down, then obviously, a crypto winter. But, we've had wild swings since the end of the crypto winter. And if I let's go to a real chart. I go to CleanSpark. On the 1 day, I mean, This was March 24th, 2024. That's almost a year ago now. Cleanspark was at almost $25. So in that year, they've quadrupled their exahash. They made $200 million GAAP net income in the last quarter that they just reported, and their stock is decimated. So do I think this stock is going to get fixed? Yes. It's not just a wish. It's down 64%. It's not just a wish and a hope, and it doesn't mean I'm right either, but when you look at this and you see a 27% short interest and you see a stock that has done nothing but outstanding performance, they've now turned the corner. They're making massive amounts of money, and their stock's down 64% in the last year. And by the way, at 24, most people were expecting this to skyrocket from there. So, not only didn't we go to 40, we went back down to 7. So these stocks have been tortured, and the people who have invested in them have been tortured along with it, which is, a lot of you here, I know, and myself and you, George. I mean, we've all taken this roller coaster. It's crazy time. But why, for instance, Bitcoin was down 2% today. The market had an okay day. It recovered. It was a little bit up. Why was Bitcoin down 2% and Bitfarms up 10% today? When there was, I can guarantee you, 5 times in the last 5 weeks where Bitcoin was up 2% and Bitfarms was down 10%. None of any of those days was there any news on Bitfarms. It's just totally irrational. So if you are in the super short term, you're living in a very irrational, highly volatile environment. And I don't think that will change, but I do think you'll see the trend. Like what happens here, we get these vicious, look at the run. Just, if you gave up, and there would be every reason to, back in July of 2023, Cleanspark hit $7.60. If you fast forward to, you're in November, and you're now at $3.50. That's a long time, right? From July to November for this stock to be down. This is a very similar situation. 55%. You could sit there and go, you know what? I'm out. I've already lost 55% of my money. I'd rather keep whatever I have left. But then here's what you would have missed. Right from this bottom, forget the top. Just in the next month, it was up 300%. 300% in 1 month. So that's what can happen. It's not a theoretical, like, gee, I hope this could happen. It happens all the time to these stocks. It's how they trade. Now, I have to say, I always have to caveat that with, we don't know what the future holds. Someday, maybe these stocks end up, at the end of their run and they just go down and go away. I don't know. I don't believe that at all. I believe it's more likely that they continue to behave like they've been behaving for years, which is 50% pullbacks, 300% run-ups, 50% pullbacks. Then from there, it happened again. Right? Then you're like, okay, we're at $13.75. Oh, it's a month later, 50% pullback again. So you could go, if you're playing this the wrong way, if you're panic selling every time we get to a bottom like this, then what'd you miss? Another 264% run up, 267%. So that's nearly two. Remember, 300% is a quadruple. So that's 2 quadruples in a 6-month period for this stock last year. So it's not crazy time to think that these things could double or triple. We're looking at quadruples that have already happened. But to your point, George, are they going to pull back after that? Probably, because they get way overheated. You'll see, but you've got clues. It's not like it's not like there's no warning signs. You got the daily RSI up at almost 87 right here. So, okay, guess what? It's getting a little overheated, right? For most stocks, 70 is overbought. For me, when I'm using crypto-related stocks or cryptocurrencies, I tend to use more 75 or 80, but this was at 87. So it can come as no surprise that, this ended up resetting itself with a 50% pullback. Same exact thing here. This was at 84.5. And then it had a 50% pullback and reset itself on the daily RSI, down every time, down near 30. So there's some, I know a lot of people hate technicals and they say, they're nonsense and they don't mean anything. But, if you look back, you'll see these correspond. So if you held this stock here, maybe, you might get out early. This wasn't the exact top, right? This was after the first big run up. So maybe you start to take profits here. You don't wholesale sell your position, but you take some profits. You go, you know what? We are way overbought. Maybe I need to take some profits right now and reinvest them if there's a pullback. Now, with the rest of your stuff, you would have caught this, but then you got your 50% pullback. These look like small things on this chart, but that's a 50% pullback. So yes, I will always, for the indefinite future, this is such a brand new asset class. It's only really this year, in the last 6 months, we got Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, referring to cryptocurrency as an asset class. You've got the president of the United States today or yesterday, he set up a national reserve. So, this is real now. This isn't 2019 or 20 or 14 or 15 or 16 or any of those years where there were still a lot of people. There's still a few people, but let me tell you, you and I both know they're living in a dream world. There's still a very few people left who think cryptocurrency is a scam and it's a joke and it's going away. At this point, all the people that matter have accepted this is an asset class. We got to set up rules for it, and it's here to stay. Right? We got the U.S. government, where the first thing they did was say we're not selling. So they already have a lot of cryptocurrency. They said we're not selling any more cryptocurrency. So what we have, Bitcoin or otherwise, we're keeping. For Bitcoin in specific, they set up let me find an article that might say this better than I do. As Crypto Summit nears, and now that it's right now, White House maintains special status for Bitcoin. The approach to the newly announced Bitcoin reserve grants that Bitcoin deserves special treatment among digital assets, a White House official says. So they think they have about 200,000 of them right now, although last week we looked at an article that said the marshal's office can't figure out how many Bitcoin they have. They're trying to, and they can't do it. President Trump is poised to host a segment of the crypto industry leadership at the White House Summit on Friday afternoon, which is right now, at which the reserve is expected to be a topic of conversation, obviously. The crypto industry likely read too much into what the president said earlier about a range of non-Bitcoin assets to be stockpiled, the official said. So they have, I pulled up, I'm not going to show you the 3 or 4 articles, but they have backtracked big time on, they put out a release that Solana, ADA, and XRP were going to be a part of the stockpile. And now they're saying, listen, we were just using those as an example. There's going to be more than just Bitcoin, but we were just using, because those are some of the large names people know, we were using those as an example of what could happen, but they've backpedaled a lot that, hey, because number one, I think they got to be careful about picking winners and losers. Having a Bitcoin reserve is non-controversial, although I can show you some articles, and I'm going to, where people are losing their mind that we're going to have a Bitcoin reserve. They're furious. And, I don't know if it's because they hate Donald Trump or whatever he does, or they hate Bitcoin, or some combination of both. But there's people that are absolutely losing it that we're doing a Bitcoin reserve. But it's happening. So, like it, don't like it, it is happening. But, finish out the thought, there's a reason that even Ethereum's considered an altcoin, right? By definition, every single thing that's not a Bitcoin is an altcoin. And Bitcoin dominance is at somewhere around 60%, which means, even including stable coins, it's still more than half of the Bitcoin or of the cryptocurrency universe. So, it came first. It is different than the rest, and that doesn't mean you can't be very bullish on some others. In fact, if you're looking for a 10x or a 20x, you got to be in altcoins. You're not Bitcoin's not going to 10x in this cycle. So I think it can go great places, and I think it's the safer bet, and I think long term we're going to see numbers that, people can't believe, but 150,000, 200,000, 250,000, those would be the types of numbers that maybe Bitcoin could run up to in this run, in my opinion. I've seen some people a lot more optimistic than me, but I'm trying to keep it real. I started a year and a half ago by saying I think it's going to get to 150,000, and then maybe 4 or 5 months ago I said, you know what, I think it's going to be 175,000. So that's kind of my range of where I think we're going to top out in this cycle. And I don't think we're going to have a 75 or 85% pullback crypto winter. I think there's too much adoption. There's already about $100 billion in the ETFs, even with all the outflow that just happened. So, that is going to continue to grow over time. And I just don't think that, those with that much adoption, and I'm just going to go to some of the other adoption that's happened. There was, go quickly while I'm doing that. Market experts weigh in on Trump's strategic Bitcoin reserve that takes out $17 billion in potential selling from Bitcoin. So the amount of Bitcoin that they have right now, because now they are saying we're not going to sell any of it, that takes $17 billion of it off the market. So for whatever that's worth. And again, they're still trying to figure out exactly how much cryptocurrency they have. Okay, so here's Texas. Texas surges in U.S. states race to put public funds into crypto. Texas's Bitcoin Strategic Reserve Bill clears its Senate, while New Hampshire marks a committee win, and Utah teeters on a deadline this week. So Texas and New Hampshire are advancing bills to invest public funds in Bitcoin following momentum from President Trump's push for a U.S. crypto reserve. So remember, there's 50 states, 20-something of them are either already investing in Bitcoin or pursuing it. And these states have gigantic retirement funds, among other things, right? Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars are wrapped up in state retirement funds. So this is what I'm saying. There's 20 different trillion plus dollar pools of money that really haven't even started to buy any Bitcoin yet. So the thought that we're topped out, to me, doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense because all this is happening, right? Texas hasn't bought their first one yet. Neither has New Hampshire, but they're on the way. They're passing legislation to do so. So I think you'll see the U.S. do this. I think you'll see most of the 50 states do this. You're going to see other countries around the world have already adopted Bitcoin as their currency, never mind have a reserve of it. So I think you're going to see countries around the world do this. You're going to see companies start to. We still haven't seen companies come into Bitcoin, right? We had that first round. Obviously, MicroStrategy is in Bitcoin, and they're in it in a huge way, right? They now hold almost 500,000 Bitcoin. Or, sorry, they now prefer to be called Strategy, same stock ticker. And then the second biggest company is Marathon with 46 or 47,000. Maybe it's 48. I'll check their press release, but somewhere in the mid to high 40,000. And then you've got Riot Riot in third with like 18,000. You've got CleanSpark in fourth with like 11,000 and HUT in fifth with like 10,000. So there's not really a lot of other companies out there that hold Bitcoin yet. So I think that influx hasn't even, those floodgates haven't even opened. We haven't had Apple, Microsoft, NVIDIA, all these multi-trillion-dollar companies that happen to have sometimes upwards of $100 billion or more of cash on hand. I mean, what would it be for Apple to put, $2 billion in Bitcoin? That's so low risk for them. It's basically no risk. So I think you're going to see all of that happen. I don't know, I don't know when again, but that's all out ahead of us. So while I do think we will have bear markets in cryptocurrency, we're going to have periods of consolidation like this. We're going to have pullbacks. We may have bear markets. I don't think you're going to see crypto winters unless there's some event that I can't fathom that's going to hit, the cryptocurrency universe. I think we've reached a critical mass where, now this is something that's happening and nobody's really having an honest debate that this isn't real at this point. Oh, but we do have a very close race on we'll close this out in a few minutes. Best return for 2025 for a Bitcoin miner. Our 4 finalists, we have 2 running away with this. CleanSpark, 48%, Marathon, 42%. Then it drops all the way down to Core Scientific at 5% and Cypher at 4%. So we have some serious consensus on CleanSpark and Marathon being the highest level conviction for the most upside. And
I think you would agree with that, wouldn't you?
I would 100% agree with that. To me, the ones that have the most upside are, and I'm Bitfarms has bounced around this list, but to me, CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, and Bitfarms, I'm absolutely convinced have massive upside. I will tell you, I have a big position in Iron. I like what Iron does. They are making money. And somebody was asking me, one of our Sour Melon Gaming, why is Iron performing poorly recently? I think it's because they're not hodling Bitcoin. And I do think 2025 is going to be the year. And that doesn't mean Iron isn't going to have a good year, because I think they're going to make money all 4 quarters. They don't hodl any Bitcoin. And even without that, their cost per coin is low. They're a very efficient company. They're a very big company and growing. So I think good things are ahead for Iron. I'm holding my position. I'm not getting rid of it, unless, these are some of the things I'm going to analyze in the next 30 or 60 days. If things really still aren't going our way, am I going to consolidate into, CleanSpark, Marathon, Riot, and maybe get rid of some of the, I bought some Hive. It's a smaller position, but, that might be on the chopping blocks. Something like MicroStrategy might be on the chopping blocks. So we'll see. And again, I haven't decided to do any of that yet, but, George was asking and people have asked, what if this keeps going the wrong way? Well, my next step would be to consolidate into my highest conviction plays before I start pulling money out of the space, because I'm not ready to do that. I don't think, I think, and obviously, the straight play on Bitcoin, which I'm doing through the ETFs so far, I think that's probably the safest play out of all of them.
I put one more poll because I wanted to know what people thought about Riot. So I put in Riot, Marathon, CleanSpark, and Bitfarms.
Okay, yeah, let's see if that
and
evens that out a little more.
Was because of Tom.
I just at a $1.20 something, they're giving shares of that away. The Stronghold stockholders voted yes on that merger last week. So I just operationally, Bitfarms is 2 different things. Operationally, they have been an excellent company and continue to be, in my opinion. So if you look at their monthly operational reports, in fact, I'm going to go to this right now. So if we look at the month of February, right now, BitDeer and Hive, as of 4 p.m. today, have not reported the month of February. TeraWolf and BitDigital will no longer be reporting their results. So I've moved them to the bottom. They're going to be off the list. I'm not kicking them off the list. They kicked themselves off the list. They stopped telling us what they're doing. So we don't know. So I don't know until TeraWolf gives us their next quarterly results. We have no idea how much Bitcoin they're mining. Same with, I'm told BitDigital's done releasing, and they're only mining 28 or 29 Bitcoin a month anyway. I added a new one to the list, Canaan, which mined 82 Bitcoin. So I think they have a place on their list. They've grown a lot, but it is a little complicated. We'll talk more about them later. But what I want to show you is, while everybody's talking about how awful Bitfarms is, Core Scientific mined 215 Bitcoin in February, and Bitfarms mined 213 Bitcoin in February. A virtual statistical tie. So one of these is a multi-billion dollar company, and the other one, you know, you could trade your tickets in at the arcade and get shares of. So
Tom, I'm gonna come out with my pick when this last poll's over with, and then I need to talk about Coinbase.
Deal. So what I would point out is there is one Bitcoin miner that improved from January to February. One. And it's Bitfarms. So operationally, this continues to be a very strong company. They have had a shakeup on their board of directors. They've gotten rid of directors. They've added directors. They've had a hostile takeover attempt. They fired their CEO. I understand the chaos that's happening there, but also, big deal, they missed their targeted 21 exahash by the end of the year. But what got lost in that is, while they did miss their target by a mile and failed to tell us that until very late in the game. So, you know, a lot of stockholders lost a lot of trust in them. But now all of a sudden they're seeing, you know, they were stuck at 11 exahash. Well, now they're up to 16.1 exahash as of this report. They're the only company that mined more month over month. And it's important to also remember they did double their exahash in 2024. So it's not like they didn't do a good job. They finished in 5th place as far as percent growth out of all the Bitcoin miners. So they're in the top 5 for that. They're in the top 6. And I suspect it will not be long, maybe next month, that Bitfarms passes Core Scientific permanently on this list and gets locked in at number 5, where it will be stuck. It stands no chance of catching these top 4. What is more likely is that somebody like a Cypher or a BitDeer is going to catch up and pass Bitfarms at some point later in the year. But Bitfarms does plan to get to 21 exahash by the end of the year, and I think they're doing a good job. So I think the fear, uncertainty, and doubt on Bitfarms has put them to a place that's just, it's insanity in my opinion. But they're going to have to show people, but they're starting to show people that they're going to do it, right? They added 2.4 exahash last month. They added almost 1 exahash this month. They're beating their month-over-month numbers. And look, people missed by a lot. Core Scientific was down 16%. Iron was down 12%. Riot was down 11%. It's important to note, I count down 10% as 0 because February has 3 less days than January. So that's approximately 10% less days. So these companies down 11 or 12%, they basically did the same as the previous month. So I don't look at Iron and say they had a bad month, or Riot and say they had a bad month. They didn't really, neither one of them grew in exahash, so it makes sense. With 3 less days, they mined about 10% less. Some companies did better than that. Marathon mined 6% less. CleanSpark mined 0% less, 626 to 624. So to our point on the poll, right, they're one of the ones that people have the most confidence in. That's another company that, to me, their performance is an A, and their financials are an A. So why their stock is an F right now, I think it will correct itself. Those are the things, that's what you look for in the stock market, in my opinion. Now, I'm either early or just wrong because, you know, I thought we'd be in a different place buy now. But I still think that, the run is ahead. I don't think so. CleanSpark is a pure play Bitcoin miner, and I think you're going to find out that these companies are going to make a lot more money than people think. So far this year, if you look, so the current difficulty level is 110.57 trillion. If you scroll down to the beginning of the year, we came into this year at 109.7 trillion. So 2 years ago, the network difficulty doubled. Last year, it was up 54%. This year, through, 2+ months, we're up 1% on the difficulty level. Now, it jumped up, it pulled back, it moved, and then it had a big jump up, and then it had a big pullback, and then it had another pullback. So I don't think you're going to see one of these 50% increases in the global hash rate. I do think you're going to see a 25% increase in the global hash rate, and then next year you're going to see a lot less than that, et cetera, et cetera. And becoming totally vertically integrated, the amount that it takes to replace all of your machines, because those do become obsolete as newer, more efficient machines come out. But remember, these newer, more efficient machines are lowering their energy cost and making them more money. That will become a smaller percentage of the amount of money that they need to raise. This was the hit right here, and these companies all took it. Every single Bitcoin miner, even the ones that have been around for years, in previous halvings, remember, 5 years ago, you were getting 12.5 Bitcoin per block. And the network was, it was 1/10 the size the network is right now. So the economics were very different. These companies didn't know they didn't have to learn how to be profitable. This cycle, they had to learn how to be profitable. They had to make massive changes. They had to do a lot of stock dilution, which I know investors hate. But if you look at my deep dives, I compare their stock dilution to their growth in their company. And I think, the good companies got much more than their money's worth for their stock dilution. And they're not going to have to do that kind of stock dilution again. Yes, they will have to raise more money. This is a capital intensive industry, but you don't have to, for these companies that have gotten themselves 1 or 2 gigawatts of power, you don't have to spend the money to redo that. You're still going to have that 2 gigawatts of power come the next halving. In this halving, they had to go from 0 because people weren't fully integrated for the most part. CleanSpark only just now in this month's press release announced their last hosted machine has now gone internal, and they are 100% vertically integrated. Marathons had to go through a huge changeover. They were 0% vertically integrated. They were asset light was their motto. And that worked at a time, and now it doesn't. So everybody's changed, but I think that they've made up for it. So I think there is room. There's not room for all of these companies, but the ones that have the best energy deals, the most infrastructure, and can perform the most consistently, I think have a lot of upside left to them. By the way, we beat 100 likes. Thank you very much. If you haven't pressed the like button, if you could smash the like button, that does help out the live stream a lot, and it helps the channel out even if you're not watching live. So it's much appreciated. Christian saying, I feel like anyone that buys a miner is just looking at the chart and thinking it's got to get back to the all-time high. So, I think people are looking at the charts. Let's see what else Christian said. Something right after that. Tom, the issue is that even if they are profitable in the act of mining, they pay themselves like crazy. And then the halving and the network hash rate. This is what I'm saying. They're keeping up with the companies that I've been talking about. they've kept up with or surpassed, their growth has kept up with or surpassed the halving and the increase in the difficulty level. Right? There's companies that have made themselves 3 or 4 or 5 or 600% larger. So that's well in excess of the reward getting cut in half and the network difficulty increasing. I think the network difficulty increasing is going to slow down because the network is enormous now. And as for paying themselves a huge amount of money, I think that's less and less and less of an issue. I know there was a lot of stock-based compensation. And I have a different perspective than I think most investors, particularly most retail investors. If you're giving management stock, management, their goals should be aligned with your goals, right? These people don't get paid tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars in cash. They get paid in stock by and large. So if they can't do a good job and raise the price of their stock, then their compensation is worthless. So I'm okay linking it to compensation. Now, there was a time where I understand people thought, even with it being stock compensation, it's just too much for companies that are losing money. They shouldn't be getting paid these types of salaries. And I can't argue with that. I won't disagree with that, but it doesn't affect, it's such a small amount of money versus their profitability equation. It's not affecting their profitability. So I think, and again, I think there will be winners and losers. I'm not saying everyone on this list is going to succeed and be around 5 years from now or even 2 years from now. I think we're already seeing some companies, right? Bitfarms, Stronghold just yesterday agreed to be bought by Bitfarms. So there's one that's going away right now. I think we're going to see a lot more go away and get consolidated and gobbled up by the larger ones. Some of them, they just don't have the power, infrastructure, and energy agreements to be efficient as time goes by. So they're just going to go away because they're never going to be able to make money. But the ones that do have good power agreements and have built their own power infrastructure, I think, I think those companies are going to be good long-term investments. Having said that, if you're a person who wants to trade these cyclically, in other words, when they peak in this cycle, you want to get rid of them and maybe buy them low in the next cycle, that's a perfectly solid strategy. If you had done that for the last, 5 years with these, you'd be way ahead of where I am right now, buying and holding. So,
well, looks like we have a winner, Tom.
Okay, let's see. Oh, wow. Okay. Cleanspark, still 2 runaway. First and second place is just, and that it was good we did a second one of these. Cleanspark, 46%, Marathon, 35%, Bitfarms, 13, Riot, 6. So this is 2 votes in a row where Cleanspark was first place, and Cleanspark and Marathon were by far the 2 highest conviction levels. So it'll be interesting. We'll keep our eye on that over time and see if that stays the same. And I actually agree. So how about you, George?
I agree, except if this happens. If Bitfarms becomes a U.S.-based company, I will give it to Bitfarms.
Ah, yes, and that's on the table. We've been, you are the one who started pounding on the table 2 years ago for that or more. And I think they're setting up to do that. We didn't even talk about that. So that's a good footnote. Yeah, and you wanted to talk about Coinbase?
Yeah, so we have a Discord if anybody's interested. A lot of people still use it. And we had our moderator quit, and his name was, I don't know if he said Zihenti. And he'd been doing it for 2 years. We really want to thank him. But I figured I'd give him just a little bit of Bitcoin, not a ton or anything like that, obviously, but just something to say thank you. So I tried to do it through Coinbase because he has a Coinbase wallet and I have a Coinbase wallet. I tried to do it. It got flagged. And of my Bitcoin, it was a very, very, very small amount of my Bitcoin. You know what I mean? It was nothing. You know what I mean? And so it gets flagged for fraud. It says it's going to take 2 days for it to complete. So if we think,
Is it just because it was across
and
countries or something?
I don't know. I didn't even ask him where he was.
It's frustrating. That's
Right.
frustrating.
So and you couldn't even do Bitcoin. It was wrapped Bitcoin, which basically is saying, we'll give you Bitcoin, but it's not your Bitcoin. You know what I mean? They wouldn't even do Bitcoin. I was just like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah, that's frustrating. Well, and there's a lot of ways to hold Bitcoin on, on chain, off chain. But if you're going to be transferring it, well, there's even ways to transfer it off chain. But I would be the type of person. I hold my Bitcoin by buying the ETFs. So
Well, I have multiple wallets. I would just wanted to try a Bitcoin. I wanted to try Coinbase to see how it would work. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I know I'm not using my wallet properly.
so I feel like that's everything for today. Any other thoughts, George? Parting thoughts, words of wisdom?
Banks are going to go out of business. The
I
tradition. I two things I want to say. One is, I think AI was made to destroy middle class in America. You know, everybody picks on the United States for, whatever reason, but what has made America the most sought after country, place to live, is because the middle class. It's not the rich people that make America great. It's not the poor people that make America great. It is the middle class.
ever shrinking middle class, unfortunately, at the moment. So I would be remiss if I didn't show what the Bitcoin miners did this week. And this was a weird one. Bitcoin was up 3% this week. We had some Bitcoin miners that did well. Okay, so here, our top two winners in the poll were Marathon and CleanSpark. Marathon up 15%, CleanSpark up 11% in a week where Bitcoin was up 3%. We did have two others in the green, Bitfarms and BitDigital. Core Scientific was down 30% this week. Most of that was in one day. TerraWolf had a rough week, down 14%. These two were the top performing stocks of 2024. They're taking a hit in 2025. But I did flash on this article. Let me just find it, because there is an explanation for what happened here.
Oh, and I do have a Coinbase wallet, by the way.
Core Scientific shares dropped 15% as Microsoft cuts CoreWeave commitments. So, as you guys know, Core Scientific has by far the biggest contracts in AI, by far bigger than all the rest of the companies put together. But basically, it's almost all with one company, CoreWeave. So, Microsoft cutting their commitment to CoreWeave, by extension, caused some shockwaves in Core Scientific shares. They're saying they dropped 15%. But if you look on this week, just this week, Core Scientific shares were down 30% when Bitcoin was up 3%. So again, talking about volatility, like the volatility's real. And that doesn't mean Core Scientific abandoned ship. I wouldn't sell it when it has a 30% pullback. My guess is this is more of a knee-jerk reaction and it recovers from here. That's my guess. But you're starting to see this week some outperformers. And then year to date, not good, not pretty. But once again, look, see, we have the smartest audience, George.
They picked the winners.
The best two performing stocks this year, CleanSpark down 4%, Marathon down 4%. In the same time, they're the only two outperforming Bitcoin, which is down 7% on the year. Some of these Bitcoin miners are having a very difficult year. BitDeer's down 49%. We just talked about Core Scientific down 45%, TerraWolf down 36%, Hut down 34%, Hive down 30%. I'm not as worried about some of these. And again, I think 2025 is going to be a good year, but I will tell you, I thought 2024 was going to be a good year, and instead it was a mixed bag. So we'll see what happens. But this is what's going on so far year to date. Everything in the red, but we do have two, CleanSpark and Marathon, outperforming Bitcoin. And this week, also CleanSpark and Marathon were the winners on the week. So that is what is going on in Bitcoin and the Bitcoin miners. Anything else, George?
No, I'm good.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thanks so much. We're here every Friday after the market closes. I hope everybody has a fantastic weekend. And as always, go Bitcoin.